Hello sweet ladies, you're welcome back to my channel. In today's tutorial I'm going to be sharing with you how to make this inbuilt drape on your gown or your skirt. So let's get started. So first I'm going to be cutting a mermaid skirt. So I folded my fabric into two. I'm going to be cutting the front first, and this is the lining for the front. Later on we are going to be using this lining to cut out the back and also to cut out the main fabric. So my fabric is folded into two diagonally, as you can see. So the first thing I'm going to do is to look for the position where I'm going to see my waist measurement plus my allowance. And once I locate the position, I'm just going to rule a line at that point. Then after that, I'll come down by ½ inch from that line, and then I'm going to roll it into a straight line also. That is going to be the seam allowance for joining this skirt part, because I'm making a dress, for joining this skirt part to the upper bodice to become a dress. All right, so that is ½ inch, and that ½ inch is allowance for sewing. All right, so I'll place the waist length measurement on that second line. Then from that point I'll measure down the hip line and also the knee length, then the length of the dress. The hip line of my client is 25 inches, the knee length is 36, and the full length is 62. All right, so after putting those points, I'm going to extend the lines. So at the waistline, I'm going to input the waist circumference measurements divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance. I'm not adding that because this is the front part. Then at the hip line, I'm going to input the hip measurements divided by 4, then the seam allowance of 2 inches. Then at the knee, whatever I have at the hip, I'm going to subtract 1.5 from it and just put it at the knee. Then whatever I have on the hip line, I'm going to add additional 5 inches to it, and then I'm going to put it at the hem of the dress. If you're making a dress, if you're making a skirt, the same thing is applicable, but this is a dress that I'm cutting, the lower part of the dress. All right, so the next is to connect the points together. If you're making a skirt, it's still the same process. You put the waistline, the hip line, the knee line, then the length of your skirt. Exactly, it's the same thing, but this is the lower part of a gown. I'm making a gown. All right, so this is it so far, as you can see. All right, so the next thing now is to cut it out so that I can use it to cut out the back pattern. All right, so I'm going to be cutting the back, so I'll fold my fabric again diagonally the way I did for the front. Then I'll mark out my zip allowance. Then after that, you place the front on top of it like this. You let the center front matches with the line that you ruled. Then I also contour the back, like I tighten the knee. You can see the way I'm doing it. I tighten the knee. Then you connect it back to the zip allowance like this. Then after that, the next modification is to add your dart allowance to the back. Just measure 1 inch on the waist, and then you blend it to the hip line like this. Then just blend it like this also. So the next thing now is to cut it out. So basically you're using the front to cut out the back. The only difference is that we add that to the back, and also we tighten the center back on the knee. So that's the only difference. And of course the back is having a zip allowance. Alright, so from the center like this, starting from that your root line, yeah, your zip allowance, you highlight it. Then from that point you measure the nipple to nipple distance, divide by 2, and then you notch it. That's going to be your dart position. And then the length for the back dart is 6 inches. The front is not going to have that, but if you feel like putting that in front, you can put. But make sure you sew in your dart in case you put that in front before you drape on it. Alright, but I don't think there's need for that. Alright, so I'm done cutting. I'm going to remove the front from the back, and I'm going to use the back to cut out the main fabric first. So this is the back, and I've used it to cut out the main fabric. You can see it's 2 inches longer than the lining. 2 inches longer than the lining. The same thing, but the length is 2 inches longer. Alright, so you keep that aside. And this is the front, which is the main topic for today. From the hip line, you measure 3 inches downward. You can see, measure 3 inches downward from the hip line and notch it. And also notch the knee length. Notch the knee length, then you open it. Like you just spread it open. This is the front. So we are going to be draping the main fabric on this lining now. So I didn't mean you put that on your own front. At this stage you need to go and sew in your dart first before you do this. This is the notching, the 3 inches below the hip line, and this is the knee notching. All right, so the next thing you want to do is to place the main fabric on top of the lining like this. Just cover it this way, and at this upper part you will let the main fabric to be longer than the lining by 25 inches. You can see my lining there, so move the fabric upward like that. Let it be 25 inches longer than the position where the lining is. All right, so I'll measure the 25 inches. You can see 25 inches. Please note the right side of the fabric is facing up. So again, let the lining be in between the fabric. You can see when I lifted the fabric up, you can see that the lining is at the center, at the middle of the fabric. So the next thing you want to do, from the tip of the fabric you measure 35 inches downward. This way, that is what I just measured now, and then you hold it and then spread your hand in an angle, and then you create your first pleat. You can see the way I created the first pleat. Can you see? The first pleat is done. And as you are doing this, ensure your lining is flat underneath. If you know you cannot do this on a table, please do it on the floor. You can see it. So the first pleat, you just pin it on that 3 inches below the hip line. Pin it. Then at the other side, it should be on the knee. So once you create the first pleat, align it with the 3 inches below the hip line at this side, and at the other side align it with the knee notching, the notch that you have on the knee. You mash it together and then you pin. Once you do the first pleat, you are almost done, because everything becomes easier afterwards. So first pleat is done. Ensure everything is nice and flat, and iron it. Pin and then you iron it flat. It's very easy to do. You can do this on your lace, you can do it on anything. I think I'll do the inbuilt drape for you on a lace fabric, so that we can create the center pleats. You know, we have another drape that is at the center. I'll find the time to do that for us. All right, so once you create the first plate, you pin it, and then you continue to make your plate. Like I said, once you do the first plate, every other thing becomes easier. It becomes very easy. So you just continue to create your plate like I'm doing. You can see the way I'm just doing it randomly, and just try as much as possible so that your plates can be uniform, like it should be even, not that one will be big and the other will be tiny. You understand? So you can see what I'm saying. Once you do it, ensure they are even, not that one is big and the other is tiny. No, let them be uniform. You can see that it's only the first plate that needs all those plenty drama. Once you create the first plate, every other thing will be easy. And ensure as you are plating, like I said, let the lining be flat underneath. So you'll be checking your lining under and ensure it's flat. You continue to do the plate until you see the head of your lining outside, and once you see the head of your lining, you will know that that's the end of the plate. So you try to arrange it and then balance the upper part with the lining. Let it match properly like I'm showing you now. You can see the way I've done it. It's pretty easy. Once you do it like this, you pin it down with the lining and then you iron. Once you iron, your plate remain permanent even if you shake it. Once you put, especially if you have a steam iron, once you steam, the crease line will just form there permanently and it will remain like that. Even if you shift the fabric, the plate will go back to its form. You understand? And once you're done ironing, you pin it with the lining. Put as much pin as you need. And when you're done pinning, you can now turn it to the wrong side. Can you see? So this is the wrong side. You can see that my lining is flat underneath. At this stage, if you turn it and your lining is not flat like this, you have to take it down, like remove all your pins and then you start again. That's why I said when you're draping, you need to ensure the lining is flat underneath. And then the next thing you have to do now is to cut it out. You can see my pins, so just cut it out. Follow the shape. Make sure you put your seam allowance at the down. Put 2 inches seam allowance at the down like you did for the back, and then you cut it out. So you turn it back to the right side. So like I said earlier, that even if you scatter it, once you iron it with steam iron, the plate will go back to its shape. So we have successfully created our plate. I'm trying to show you that even if you scatter it, it will still go back to how it is. All right, so the next thing you have to do now, if you like at this stage, is to remove the pins and then you only pin the pleats on the main fabric. You understand? Just shift the lining away and pin only on the ankara so that you can use lining to turn the fabric. But I'm going to show you what I usually do, because to avoid story that touches, because I cannot afford this pleat to scatter at this stage. So I'll show you what I'll do now. So I'll go to the sewing machine and I will be pushing away the lining, then I'll stitch the pleats down all around. So I'll show you on the sewing machine what I usually do. So let's go do that. All right, here we are. So you can see some of my pleats extend to the waistline. So the first thing you do is just look at the way I'm going to do it. You can see some of my pleats extend to that point. So I'll just lift it up like this, then move my lining backward, and then use my sewing machine to stitch the pleats together. You understand? If you like, you can pin like I said, but I prefer this method because it's more faster and yeah, it's more reliable because I don't want anything to scatter my pleats. So the next is to move to the side. This is the side. I'm done with the upper parts. So the pleats are at this side also. I'll take off the pin. You can see that I pinned them together. I'll move the lining backward like this gently, and then I'll sew on my pleats. So just continue to sew on your pleats and then be shifting your lining away from it. Don't forget, I already have pins all over the fabric, so even anything I do, the pleats cannot scatter because besides I've ironed it, so it's just for the pleats to stay together. You can see I already shift the lining away and I'm done with the pleat at the other side. This is the part with the longest pleat, you know, that one that starts from the knee. So this is my knee. I'll take off the pin from that place, then push the lining inward, like this, and then I'm going to stitch on the pleats so the pleats can stay together. All right, I'm done stitching the pleats together. So this is how it is, exactly the same as it was. So at this stage I can conveniently and confidently take off my pins. All right, you know, I have pins all over it, so I can take off all the pins now. And like I said earlier, if you like, if you don't want to go and stitch it down, you can just be lifting the pleats off the lining and then you pin the pleats. You can see the way I'm showing you, in case, you know, I've sewn mine, but I'm just showing you in case you don't want to go and sew it down. So just lift the pleat off the lining like this, and then you pin only on the pleats, not on the lining, because we need to take out this lining so that we can use the lining to turn the side and the hem of our skirt. All right, so take off the pin, lift the fabric up, pin on only the fabric, in case you did not do that initial step that I just finished. All right, so once all of that is done, the next thing now is for you to remove the Ankara fabric. Don't forget to take off all the pin. You can see I have lots and lots of pin all over it. So take off all the pins so that you can take your lining from underneath it. You can see that everything is intact. So now place the lining on top of the fabric. So you place the lining on the right side of the fabric. So right side of the lining is facing the right side of the fabric right now. And then you take to the sewing machine and sew the side and the hem. So I'm just going to pin the side. Alright, so because I'm still going to attach the upper part to it, I'm not going to start my sewing exactly at the beginning of the waistline. I'm going to come down by ½ inch. So I'll show you what I'm going to do on the sewing machine now. Alright, so I'll start with the hem of the skirt. You know the main fabric is 2 inches longer than the lining, so match them together at the hem like this. Let them align together at the hem, and then you stitch the hem of the two of them together, lining with the main fabric. You stitch it with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Please use a matching thread. So once you're done with the hem, go back to the waistline. Like I said, I'm attaching the upper parts to it later on, so I'm not going to start exactly on the waist. So I'll come down maybe by 1/2 or 1, then I'll start my stitching with 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'll join the lining and the main fabric together all the way down to the hem of the skirt. One side is done. You repeat the same thing to the second side. When you're doing the second side, you will see that the main fabric will be on top. So it's still the same thing. So with 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down to the hem. Alright, so I'm done stitching them together. The next thing is to bring your fabric to the right side. So just turn it to the right side. Everything remains the same. If you have been sewing before, everything remains the same at this stage because the pleat is already part of the skirt. So this is how it is. Turn it to the right side and then you iron, and then at this stage you can go ahead and join with the back. If you're making a skirt, if you're making a dress, go ahead and attach it with the upper part and then you complete it. But there's one little step that we still need to do, and I'm going to show you again on the sewing machine. So let's go. Alright, so this is the last step of this style. So you have to start lifting up the pleats the way I'm showing you now, and then you're going to be sewing at the center like this. Once you do this, irrespective of anything, the pleat will never scatter again. So just lift it up. You can see the way I lifted the pleat up, and then you're going to make your stitch on it, and you're going to do this for all the pleats. So just leave the pleat, flip it up, and then sew on the crease line. You see the line is already there. The line in which you're going to make your stitch is already there. So you do it for all the pleats. I'm done. You can see as many lines as I have at the back. So I'm going to lift them up and show you now. So this is what you do. Just lift the pleat up like this, and then you make your stitch underneath it. You can see, even if you dust it, wash it, do all sort of, the pleat can never scatter again because we already stitched it down. Can you see the stitch line? Can you see it? Can you see my line? So just lift the pleat up just the way I'm lifting it now, and then make your stitch on the crease line. You can see the line there. So that's how you are going to do for all the pleats. You can see the line. So you do that for all the pleats, and that's it. And that will be the end of the class for today. Thanks for watching. Please, if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, please kindly subscribe and hit the notification bell and give this video a thumbs up. Show your love for me by clicking the like button, and please subscribe.